Hey, this is Dave from MetalEpidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with an album review, joined by my man Kyle, and we're here to check out the new album from Danish Post-Apocalyptic sludge band LLNN. The band's new album, Unmaker, will be released on September 24th via Pelagic Records. So, this will be the third album from the band, who have been on the go since around 2014. But these guys, or a couple of these guys, were actually members of another Danish band who called it a day around 2014. A band, strangely enough, that I shared the stage with a couple of times back in the day, which is strange. A band called the Psych Project. The guitarist Christian and the drummer Rasmus were both part of the Psych Project. And I only found this out like this or last week, even though I've been listening to this band for a few years. So if you're listening, Christian or Rasmus, I hope you're well. It's been a while since we last met when you guys were up in Scotland, but we supported you guys in a couple of your Scottish dates, which was pretty cool. And they were awesome. I loved the Psych Project back in the day. Really cool bunch of guys. So it was a bit strange when I started to kind of research the band. I was like, wait a minute, hold on. I know these guys.
I know you guys.
So musically, these guys come from a bit of a hardcore background, and again, the Psych Project had a bit of that as well. Their sound is a kind of amalgam of like hardcore, sludge, and post metal as well. But I mentioned earlier they also have a kind of post-apocalyptic element to their sound as well. The band have said in the past they're like huge fans of like classic sci-fi movie scores and video games, and we're kind of fascinated by how like cinematic sound design can evoke certain emotions and kind of let the imagination unfold into like kind of abstract storytelling. They released a short film showing you how they record and kind of incorporate a lot of those sounds. It kind of showcases the process from the original sound recording to the final result, and it's really cool. It's shot in like a blacksmith's, and they use like various bits of like machinery and industrial tools, and then they kind of like modulate those sounds in like post production.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a really cool video. Just showing you how like where it starts and where it ends is really interesting. And these sounds basically orchestrate and exemplify the album's central theme. So Unmaker is a tale about how technology, in combination with certain power structures, is transforming humanity, essentially affecting human values and becoming an end in itself. A tale about how progress becomes regress depending on the angle of the observer and the standards of appraisal. So I kind of knew what I was going into to some extent. I've heard both the previous albums, Loss and Deads, so I knew this was gonna. Well, I had an idea this was going to feel like the kind of like the audio equivalent of like a dumper truck just unloading a mountain of gravel on top of you. And even though you kind of know it's coming, but you still can't really prepare yourself for it. It just kind of suffocates you from the first riff, and it doesn't really let up at all. It's like being continually waterboarded with riffs is basically how it felt. And like just about when you're about to kind of like give in, the kind of tranquil closing track of Resurrection begins, and I shit you not, when that track started, that last track, I actually took a breath of relief when I heard, like, because it's got these big like spacey synths and it kind of opens the track up. But anyway, let me back up a second. And
You're
just
already at the end, Dave.
Yeah, no, I've jumped right to the end of the album. Let me try and put into words what I kind of experienced here, because this is a bit of an experience. This album, I think this is the most LLNN album we've heard from these guys. Although they've always had a certain style and a certain tone about them, you can make the odd comparison between bands like them and like Cult of Luna or Amenra, The Ocean, even to an extent. But this album is probably the first one where I felt like it felt really individual. This felt like a band trying to create their own sound. And sure, it still pulls very much from like the sludge and blackened sludge and post metal, and you can hear that like at its core. But those natural sounds, you know, the kind of and the soundtrack type elements I've included that I mentioned earlier, they do give this album a kind of part of an industrial feel as well at times. And I think they've summed up this perfectly. You know, when they call it post-apocalyptic sludge, I think that's probably the most perfect name for it. The intro on tracks like Obsidian make you feel like you're, like I felt like I was right in the middle of the Blade Runner soundtrack or something like that. You know, it had that real kind of, almost kind of sci-fi kind of feel to it. And I think those elements may be the key to this band separating themselves from those other bands that I mentioned. Not only is this utterly repulsively heavy, and I mean heavy, like this is, I remember when we reviewed the Primitive Man album, I think it was last year, and it kind of gave me a similar type feeling in my gut of just this being really abominably heavy, like or even like Humanity's Last Breath, you know, well, like very different style wise, but kind of similar in tone. And on here, partly I think that is created by the production, the thickness, and just the guitar tone. Let's just talk about that guitar tone, because the thickness and the density of the guitars alone, just colossal. Like, oh my god, what a fucking guitar tone that is.
It's just nuts.
Unbelievable.
How did you do that?
No, I was kind of in awe of that guitar tone for like the first track. I was like, I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on. I was just like, listen to that guitar. That's unbelievable. And the bass, holy shit, the bass.
It's disgusting. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Talk about like weight that is just so thick, but you can hear it as clear as a bell. You know what I mean?
It's
like,
great.
And
it's worth listening to as well, the bass.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But you know, as heavy as the instruments are on this, like I think the kind of cinematic soundscapes almost kind of elevate the size of this even more. Actually, I started listening to it on. I was listening to it at my desk at work, and I had my just little in-ear headphones, and I got into like the second track, and I was like, you know what, no. Take these off. This needs the big headphones. This has to be listened to on like the best quality of headphones, because all that extra stuff, all that little bit of detail, it's just well worth hearing on a really good quality pair of headphones. Just all the layers and everything that's going on in the background was just sublime. Like I loved it. I thought the production of this was absolutely superb. But it's also got something about it that feels unlike a lot of the other bands that kind of live in the same genre as this band. I think they definitely have developed a distinctive sound of their own, even more so than on previous albums. They've taken that sound they had on Loss and Deads and just expanded on it even more, especially those cinematic soundscapes, which just make it sound gargantuan, really. And the end result is an album that I haven't really heard from any other band this year. Like, I can't really think of any other album that made me think or feel like this at all. Like musically, it's a very dense sounding record. You know, those kind of slow, like kind of churning rhythms and kind of sluggish tempos just almost like emphasize the kind of weighty kind of heaviness of this, and it doesn't really ever go above that kind of mid tempo at all, which is fairly normal for sludge and post metal, but it didn't diminish the album at all or become.
I don't think it would have benefited for going any faster. I mean, it would have been, something would have been lost, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It just felt like that tempo and rhythm kind of felt like it was keeping you in its grip for the entire album. Like just like
it didn't get boring either.
No, it didn't.
Something like that would, but no, absolutely did not. No.
I just loved that kind of that tempo. It felt a little kind of suffocating at times, but I kind of also loved that about it at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was one of those albums that every time I heard it, I kind of loved it a little bit more. Highlights for me, and I kind of feel like every track on this could be a highlight if I'm honest. But Imperial, the opener, obviously, because the riffs just floor you from the get-go. But I also liked on that first track, there was a kind of subtle melody in the vocals from Christian. He has a tone that's quite gutsy, kind of hardcore at its roots, but it also does go kind of guttural, and then it also goes more kind of almost like kind of Grady from Will Haven, that kind of higher end type scream as well. But what I liked was when he kind of blended in a touch of that kind of tonal kind of melody, it really added a hook in amongst all the heaviness. I loved Desecrator just for the kind of grooves and the rhythms alone, but also has riffs that will just erode your eardrums. I thought like there's a kind of cinematic kind of interlude track, Vacuum. I thought that was a really clever move, especially on an album as kind of enormous as this. I think that contrast kind of helps give you kind of a moment to breathe before the kind of next wave of sound just kind of hits you. I love the synth sounds. There was a track called Scion, I think it was. Really kind of ominous, kind of bleak sounds, but again, completely worked with its surroundings, and again, kind of feeding into that whole post-apocalyptic thing as well. The guitars on that track as well, also really cool, really dark and gloomy. I love the fact that they went from that into something that kind of a little bit lighter, like Interloper. Again, like the dynamics and the kind of use of contrast, just fantastic on this. Interloper does eventually evolve into like an absolute beast of a track, with like these just really dissonant and kind of caustic sounding riffs. You know, just you've got that kind of like this look of disgust on your face the whole time that you're listening to it.
But it's a good thing.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah, and there's even in that there's a bass drop in there as well.
I know,
which
but
really,
it worked.
It really isn't needed, guys. Like that. I mean, it's fucking ridiculously heavy already, but that bass drop was just like, oh my god.
The thing is, they only used it once on the album, and it made it work. It wasn't like, oh, here's the chorus, we're going to put a bass drop at the beginning. It was like, no, like, I know I've bemoaned bass drops in 2021, but it worked here. If you're tasteful with it, then it's fine. But
absolutely.
I think they absolutely nailed that. Yeah.
I thought Division, could have some of my favourite riffs on the album, just again very relentlessly heavy. And the last thing I want to mention is that the riff at the end of Tethers, my god, just utterly crushing, unbelievably heavy. I could go on about every track here, to be honest.
You have done so far, why stop now?
Pretty much. This is top tier release for me. It will crush your soul every time you hear it, but you'll kind of want to go back for more, if I'm honest. I love this, absolutely love this album. Kyle, did you share in any of those thoughts on that album?
Nah, I hated it. No, I love this. I feel exactly the same as you. It was absolutely soul destroying in every way.
Yep.
But in a way you wanted it to happen in. If you know what I mean? It's like, I want to have my soul destroyed. How can I do that? Oh, with LLNN. I honestly hadn't heard of them before. I'd heard their name before, but I'd never checked out their music. I didn't know quite what to expect. And then when I was listening to it, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
They remind me a little bit, and I've mentioned this band a few times before, but Zerath. But like, if you take... Because they do a similar sort of thing. They take very cinematic, like metal, but it's a much different direction. This is very much sort of the world has ended and it's your fucking fault.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is really rewarding on the re-listen. Like the first time through, it was like, this was really good. You listen to it again, you can always pick out new things and new parts. You don't get everything in the first listen, which I really appreciate about stuff like this. That's why I love 9 Inch Nails albums, because 20 years on, I'm still picking out new stuff. Yeah. So this is one of those. I don't know if it's going to be 20 years in it, but it's going to be. I've listened to it a few times, and every time I'll be able to pick up something new and some different extra texture or a little bit of something here and there. Yeah. Like the bass drop, I didn't pick that up until the second or third listen. So I was like, oh, totally unnecessary, but very tasteful. All right. But I want to talk about that bass tone because it is clear as a bell. Yeah. Heavy as fuck. Yeah. It is it's just disgusting. There's no other way to put it. But the bassist is actually doing something interesting as well. They're not just, following along with the roots and stuff. They're doing good stuff, and I really hear it, and I'm glad that they brought up the low end. So, it's such a great foundation for the rest of this band. I don't think the guitar tone would be half of what it is without the bass.
True.
So it's like, it absolutely is necessary, and I love that they did that. they're very much paying attention to all of the separate parts, and they're not just being lazy about anything, which is really good.
Yeah.
That riff in Division, I want to marry it. It's so good. I loved it. It's absolutely a stand-up point for me. It's just, oh, good.
Yeah.
So every time I listen to it, little hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Oh, and the production is masterful. It's really good. I couldn't hear any like obvious studio fuckery that wasn't standing out in places like this. It sounded really good. It suited the band sound very well, and it wasn't like you don't hear time alignment on the hi-hats or the crashes or anything. It's fantastically done, and they can clearly play their instruments very well. So, I mean, for their third album, you'd hope they would. But
I wonder if they're involved in the production of the album. I couldn't find out who'd recorded it or whatever, but
it might be self-done then.
It could be, you know, obviously they must be involved in a lot of the kind of the industrial sounds and stuff like that, so you never know, they might be involved in the production as well.
Oh, yeah, the exploration of samples on this is unbelievable. Like, I can hear where they've taken like some weird sound from a blacksmith or an industrial tool or something and just messed with it, and it's just like, oh, that sounds awesome. I do that quite a lot as well for very subtle things like in intros for songs and stuff like that. But they've taken it to a very, I mean, I wouldn't say another level, but a very unique level. They've used it in a lot of different ways than I would, and a lot of other people would. So, really, it was a really good listen, and I can't wait to just carry on listening to it, especially when I want my soul destroyed.
Nice. Ratings for this new album from LLNN. I honestly have nothing negative to say about this at all. Like, I couldn't find anything to dislike. Nothing at all.
No, me either.
And it's got that kind of repeat listen factor. Like, I just want to go and listen to it again. Yeah. So I think for me, it's got to be a 5 for me. I'm going to go 5 out of 5 in this one. Kyle?
Yeah, you know what? I'm joining you with that. It is a 5-star album. Nice. There's nothing you can say bad about this unless you don't like the genre, but then you're in the wrong place. So the re-listen value is unbelievable. It's like buying a game you can play through time and time again and not get bored. It really is that good, and I will be coming back to this.
Yeah. And
I'll be checking out the previous releases, and I can't believe I've not heard of this band before. It's like, where have you been in my life?
True. I mean, I was slightly disappointed when the Psych Project broke up, but this kind of makes it all worth it, to be honest. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's taken 7 years or whatever, but you know, it's fine, guys. I'll let you off with that. You know, I'm quite happy now.
You've been forgiven.
Yes, this album has more than made up for it.
Oh yeah.
So this one drops on the 24th of September on Pelagic Records. You can check them out on Facebook, facebook.com/LLNN band. We'll put a link below to their Facebook and to their Bandcamp page so you can check out the album. It's up for pre-order. Check this one out, guys. Let us know what you think. We've obviously loved the album. We'd love to hear what you think about it. Drop some comments in below once you've checked it out. That's the review. Thank you very much for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
See you later.